Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tim Janssen, and I work at 216 Lab as a blockchain specialist. At 216 Lab, we've built our own Ethereum-based blockchain platform, and we are working on several blockchain pilots for different fields. And we are about to air 2 pilots later this year. Today I'm going to talk to you about some personal experience as a student and as a starter on the market I faced, which I think can be solved with blockchain. Let's first take a look at this an image Theo provided me. So in the past, education was all on paper, so you had to apply for courses and projects on paper, and we had this talk about a ship where someone had to bring his credentials to prove he had certain skills. Well, if they were stolen, then he had a problem. And currently we have the internet, so we can store credentials digitally, and we can apply for courses digitally. And Alan Third and others have talked about ways to do this with the blockchain in the future. And the problem with the present is, indeed, we have the internet, but the internet, they don't have a concept of trust. So we can't trust the data that is on the internet. Actually, I actually have some experience with it myself. When I graduated in physics in 2014, the end of March, I was offered a job at Alliander, which is a grid operator. And the shares of Alliander are all owned by the government. And because of that, you have to satisfy certain law and regulations, meaning you had to have a master's degree to do certain jobs, or you would earn a lot more money if you had a master's degree instead of a bachelor degree. The thing is, I passed all my grades and exams at the end of March, but I was going to get my certificate in October, so that was more than 5 months later. And in that time, I officially couldn't start this job. Well, already they wanted me to work there. My professor already congratulated me with my master title, but I couldn't prove it, because showing my blackboard with all the grades on it was not legally binding. Luckily, I had a professor who also works on the exam board, and he gave me a signature, and that was fine. So we still use paper for it and not digital signed documents. And well, with blockchain, well, we have already seen it in previous sessions. We can actually prove with a trusted single source of truth that you got all degrees necessary to get your master's degree. But we can go a lot further, and actually I'm not going to talk too much about this because Alan Third sorry, I forgot your name. I've already talked about this, and the thing is, we have so much more than just grades, and employees more and more ask for much more than just grades, master degrees and bachelor degrees. They want to know side activities, because there are more and more people with a bachelor and master degree, so you have to distinguish yourself. And to distinguish yourself, we can go into to international courses and apply for some, go to Africa and help do some charity work, work in the union board. And all of these experience also give you a set of skills and competences which are not shown on your certificate. So basically, it's not sufficient, and you just put this on his resume. And we've already seen the statistics that a lot of people lie in the resume. Actually, I read in the paper that 1 in 10 applicants are caught cheating with really big lies, like they say they have a master's degree which they do not have. And it's not really that hard to falsify a paper that really looks like a master's degree. And with blockchain, we can, first of all, we can really prove that we have a master's degree, and we can also show other competences and other skills, as we've seen in the previous session. So what we really want, we have a blockchain, and we want that every relevant person can look at the same data with a different view. So as a student, I can apply for courses, the teacher can grade these courses, I can do group projects, and my group collaborators, they can give some review about how they liked working with me, stuff like that. And the employee can see all relevant information from a built digital portfolio this way, as we've seen in the previous session. And the way to do this, I'm not going to stay too long here because we've already seen this. We can store all these certificates in a decentralized cloud like IPFS. Because storing the large documents on the blockchain is very, very expensive. So we can just store a hash on the blockchain to prove no one has tampered with the document, and we can use a self-sovereign identity, like for instance Uport in the near future, to so students can own their own data and they can choose whom to share this data with. And then you can build front ends to create a digital portfolio. So employees don't need as many resources in recruitment anymore because they have a trustworthy portfolio. But even then we can go, this is about hashing, I'm going to skip that. But even then we can go a step further. I also read in the paper that, I guess it was 2015, that DO, the Institution of Education, they paid 400,000 euros of undeserved scholarships. Well, not everyone here is from the Netherlands, I guess. In the Netherlands, we have this scholarships for people who come from a relatively poor family, or people who are living outside their parents' home, and then they get a scholarship for their basic living expenses. And a lot of people, they commit fraud when applying for these kind of scholarships. And with the blockchain, it is possible to connect with APIs from the tax institution, or with StudyLink, which is a service which shows you're enrolled, yes or no. And we can actually securely store this data and tell the education institution that someone has the right to certain scholarships, yes or no. And they can even automatically stop this. So for instance, when I quit, when I was done studying, I had to log into a lot of services and tell them I graduated. So I had to stop my travel product, I had to stop my scholarships, everything, and I probably even forgot something, and then I was fined because I forgot to stop a certain service. And yeah, why is this? I mean, we all have the internet where it's updated that I graduated, so it should be done automatically, right? And with with the blockchain, it should be possible to connect all these APIs, and it will just update that I'm graduated and I no longer am in need of a travel card, a scholarship, and stuff like that. And it should all be done automatically. So, in summary, the blockchain it can greatly optimize processes and prove that the authenticity of certificates, making it very hard to fraud, and it will make it easier to get even credits for following courses. I mean, in the current system, we only get credited if we finished the entire degree, and I think you should also be credited for finishing a part of your education. They should be automatically be able to cancel services. And with privacy, using zero knowledge proof and things like that, we can actually provide privacy on public blockchains as well. And and we can prevent fraud and create a digital portfolio. So that's all really great. But we can even go a step further. I'm also working at a startup called Colony.io, and they have a vision that work will get more and more decentralized. So. When actually we already work like this in my company. We have programmers living in India and Russia, and I work with them through Skype. And we pay them with international payments, which actually can be done much faster with crypto. But And we can just the idea is that we can also get a different employer relationship. Like we can only apply for small projects and only the projects we like. So for instance, I get a reputation based on these portfolios we talked about. We can even add work experience on it. And when I look for a Java programmer, then someone who has done the most projects with Java programming and finished these with satisfaction of the client will get a high, get a lot of reputation. So when you're looking for a JavaScript person, the one with the highest reputation will be up, so you know which one is best suited for the job. Of course, he also must be available. But you can also do that for other skills, like photography and stuff like that. So you can pick a project for programming, you can pick a project for photography, and you get these kind of colonies. And you can even earn credits for like gaming, and it sounds maybe a little weird because we have like games like EVE Online right now, where they have entire guilds and people are doing really difficult jobs like recruitment and doing bookkeeping in virtual worlds. And often they do this work even better than people in the real world. And we envision that we can actually give people credits for these skills and add that to this portfolio and use these skills also in the real world. And that is what I wanted to tell you, and I now want to start a discussion about things you think the blockchain can help us with in education, and what you think how education should look like in the near future. Thank you.
I have a question regarding the last slide, because for me it's not very clear what the difference is between, for example, the endorsements on LinkedIn and if you build up a reputation which is shown on the blockchain.
Okay, good question. The thing is, with reputation on LinkedIn, I'm not really, there is not real trust on LinkedIn. So what you see, that I see a lot of people having a lot of recommendations on LinkedIn, and generally they are from friends, people they know, so they're not really worth anything. The credits in a colony, they can only be given by clients you actually worked for. So you apply for, someone is looking for a Java programmer, and you, in a smart contract you put the conditions to finish what you want to see as an end result, and if you pass this, then you will get tokens, and you will get credited for the delivered work. So you really know that he did something useful, instead of just putting fake credentials on it, which happens actually quite a lot on LinkedIn. Yes.
Hi, my name is Dave Moldoff from Academy One. I want to follow up on his question about LinkedIn. And I know you just mentioned it as being a negative. Let's say I have 50 people who have credentialed me or have said that I'm good at X, Java programming, let's say. Is that okay? I'm sorry. And obviously you don't know those 50 people, right? But they all independently looked at my profile and said, whether they're my friends or not, they validated that I am good at Java programming, right? Mm-hmm. What's the difference between that and doing a blockchain approach? We have the same problem, because if you go back to your slide that has the institutional, the working process, that one there, where if I did Java programming in the United States, or I did it in China, you won't know who I did it for.
You actually have like self-sovereign identity, so you can actually see who gave you credits.
You're making the assumption that I know everybody in the network.
No, actually,
I
think it's a little bit more complicated than that. In LinkedIn, I can actually create 50 fake accounts, and with these 50 fake accounts, I can give myself credits for...
I can do that with blockchain too. I can create 50 applications, and I can do the exact same thing.
No, the idea is that you can do that because you have like these certified colonies, and they so they have like a and they put on projects on it, and you can only put them on democratically. So you can't just individually post fake projects on it.
I could create an application just like you can create an application, could we not? I can create one right now as Academy 1. I can create one as Academy 2. I can create one as Academy 3. There's no governance to say I can't.
Well, the idea is that we build a platform with smart contracts, and they are owned by a community, and this community meritocratically or democratically decides about credentials.
So let's go to the community, which then says now you're going to self-govern the process of who is on the network, who is privately on the network or who is publicly on the network, publishing the credential. Mm-hmm. So I'm just trying to get you to question, where is the source of our lack of trust? The source of lack of trust does it not begin with who publishes the credential, right? So if I went to, I was using this example earlier, Beloit College. Do you know who Beloit College is? Do you know where it is? Do you know how long they've been in business? We know all these men in this room.
Well, in fact, we have already thought about that as well. We connected the Chamber of Commerce also on the blockchain, so you can actually even check if a company is actually real, yes or no. And of course, you can't completely get rid of fraud, but the idea is that you have a lot of ways to check who is saying what, and you actually get paid for these projects. So you can actually see how much money did someone receive for this. Or, of course, you also might want to anonymize this, but you can see proofs that somebody actually earned money with it.
So Nir, what I'm trying to get, I'm trying to ask you the question: how are we going to, whether it's with blockchain or with the internet or with any type of technology tool, how are we going to deal with the lack of familiarity we have? You do not know the 5,000 institutions in the United States.
No.
You do not know the institutions in China. We do not know the institutions in India.
But the idea is that if I have to fraud 50 fake credentials here, I have to pay a lot of money, because putting on a project on it costs money. To finish this project, I have to transfer money. So it's not free. So giving these credentials, you actually have to pay. It's not for free. So if I could put a project on this for Java programmer and I have to pay him, like, I say something like 2,000 euros, which is not that weird a thing to create a website or something. After I finish this and I paid this 2,000 euros, then I can give credentials, not afterwards.
Thank you. I just wanted to jump into a little bit this conversation, because it made me think of the connection between non-formal learning, and in this case, it's an informal reputation system because it's informal. We know it's people saying, I think you're good at this and good at that, and say, yes, thank you, with formal learning. So the connection between non-formal and formal learning, and credentials that are issued by institutions that are recognized, that can issue legitimate, credentials, with the reputation that is built from the community. And perhaps a way forward in this discussion would be to think about different sources of acknowledging, a professional, someone who is good at X or Z. So think of not relying entirely upon the blockchain, but perhaps looking into these different ways in which they can triangulate and coincide and converge. Mm-hmm. Just an idea.
Just to, I think, expand on that further. So there's also the possibility to take it beyond just effectively saying, this is what other people think about me, which is all LinkedIn verification is, which is all the sort of peer recognition systems are, but also to connect that to evidence for your claims. You want someone who's a good Java programmer. You can get lots of people to say, oh, this person's an excellent Java programmer. But you also have the history of their commits to GitHub on Java program. You can actually analyze that.
That's actually the entire idea. You have to upload the code, and then you have these code checks, and it has to meet these conditions. So there's also a lot of objective proof on it. Like, did you finish in time? Did it meet the coding standards and stuff like that? And of course, there's also a subjective part.
Yes, of course. Yeah. I'm a terrible. Do you want to throw?
Thank you. My name is Luc Buit. I'm with the province of Groningen. The discussion we just had, I think it proves, as Alan said, the past credentials, the value of past credentials. If you have credentials that were committed to blockchain in, say, 2013, then you cannot recreate that. And if you have, say, 50 profiles or 50 fake accounts that all commit some very good recommendation, and it's all in 2017, and not very trustworthy. I do not.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point.
So my question here is, do you integrate sort of time stamping of all past achievements?
Oh, basically, that happens automatically when you put it on the blockchain, because information or the hashes of the information are stored in different blocks, and the blocks are timestamped by default.
Naturally.
I'm Jeff. I'm a board member of the Dutch National Students Association. My question is a little bit different in nature. A lot of information can be stored in these kind of systems. But how do we prevent that in the future that, for example, employers or higher education institutions, which are pretty powerful, demand that users will give up all their data? Like I understand the technical part, that like it's protected, but they can kind of like demand that you give it up. Simply because they can say, like, we will not accept your job application if you do not give your entire portfolio to us.
Yeah, well, my opinion on the matter is you have a choice. You work for that company, yes or no. It's still your if they want to demand it and you're not, you don't feel good about that, then just don't work for the company. But maybe it's a little bit childish argument.
My name is Wilfred. What I noticed today is that blockchain is mostly about administrative processes, certification, etc., and giving access to certifications and credentials in a secure and trusted way. Is it possible to apply blockchain technology on the learning process itself? And maybe are there already examples that you can use these kind of technologies for learning itself?
Can you elaborate a little bit further?
I can remember that I once read an article or contribution about peer-to-peer learning, and that you could support peer-to-peer learning, so you can teach me, or we can discuss and interact, and I learn from you and you learn from me. That these kind of processes could be facilitated with blockchain technology.
I think actually Alan Third showed them something that was really close to what you're talking about. So you can have like this. That was the last slide about the Uber in education. So you can select a tutor in a certain time frame and apply for a course, and then this tutor will create this course, and you can also create the tutor. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, but then the grading is done in the blockchain with blockchain technology, but the learning, the teaching, how is blockchain technology used for that? And maybe it isn't possible, it can be, but that was what I was wondering about.
I have the feeling that that's not something that the blockchain should be used for. The blockchain is there for proof and permission layers, but the learning experience itself, well, I don't really see blockchain playing any part in that. Maybe someone else has a different opinion about that. Yeah.
You said it's for proof, but what I'm thinking all day is we're talking quite a lot about verification. So making sure that someone can verify that you did something. But how does that someone know? So for validation, I don't know if blockchain is really something. So could you elaborate on that a little? So the difference between really proving that someone can do something or knows something, is blockchain usable for that? Or do we only use it if we know someone did and we're an authority, then we can put on a certification or something.
I'm not
Do
sure.
you understand the difference? So to validate the learning is something different than to verify it, right? So to say, I'm saying that you can do something, giving a presentation like this, for instance.
Okay, like that. Yeah, well, I think the blockchain in this case can only be used at a certain time. A person said you could do something, you passed a course, but actually validating, but some things that's possible, other things I think that's quite hard. For instance, if you put on some code on the blockchain, you can check coding standards, and it can also validate that. But other things like presentation skills, I think that is very hard to validate using blockchain technology.
The other presentation earlier this morning, though, talked about micro-credentialing and badging. So if we take it down to the level of a course, or a subject level course, every exam, every assessment could technically be stored as a transaction on the blockchain.
Yes,
so
exactly.
going through the process, it can be very granular, whether it's at the end or all through the process. So I think, again, it comes back to how we would design a blockchain environment. So I'm not trying to disagree with you, but I think we don't need to limit the concept of it at this point, because we're just really exploring how the use case could apply itself. So we have the conveyance of what I learned. I have a claim. Now someone verifies my claim, and now I want to, and it compiles it into a credential, right? That's what an assessment is, right? Now that I've conveyed it to you, now you want to say, is it authentic? Is it real? Has it been duplicated? Has it been changed? Has it been altered? That's where blockchain, I think, really comes into strong use case, right?
Yeah.
So, but I do think it could be utilized as a fundamental LMS if we wanted it to be, if we wanted to build it to that. But that's not, a lot of the conversations, though, have been about the end process, the outcome of the learning process, not about the inputs. And I think that's where you're going with your question is, can we leverage the blockchain along the way? Which, again, goes into micro-credentialing and the badging and all the levels of things that we could store in the blockchain along the way, right? Would you agree?
Yeah, okay.
Just before I pass it on to you, just a quick parenthesis. I think that someone mentioned about companies requiring us to provide all our portfolio. I think that's a very valid point. And we need to be we need to pay a lot of attention in order not to transform this wonderful idea of the blockchain into a surveillance mechanism, right? So, this is just a warning on how the community, us, how we are going to deal with these aspects, and really having the ethos of blockchain as much as we have the ethos of open source and open educational resources, and be very much based on that. So perhaps that's something that we could, at some point, think further. And all these issues, they are actually very valid, and how we are going to approach them.
My name is Henny Bosse. I work for the Dutch Education Agency of Ministry of Education, and I agree with you both, because I think that we're only at the infant state of blockchain, and maybe when we arrive in 2025, we will see a lot of a paradigm shift in how we learn. How do we react to communities? These communities, they are here. And for me, as part of the government, it's a very interesting question. How do we relate as government to this new kind of business models? I would like some reactions from the people here. Say it's 2025, what business models do we see? How should the market react? And how should we respond as government?
Well, I actually think this is a bit of a non-answer, but if you look 10 years ago and ask the same question about now, or maybe 15 years, the answer is, well, all our predictions we made back then are completely off, because nobody had thought about the blockchain at all. or that it would play such a huge factor now already in our society. So, and it becomes bigger and bigger, of course, but we have no idea where we will stand in 2 years, let alone 15 years. So I think it's most important to keep our eyes open and keep our minds open and think about the possibilities, and also look out for not changing this to something that is, by our current standards, unethical at some point. And there are many possibilities, but it's very hard to look so far in the future, I think.
By the way, just want to say we are not using blockchain anywhere right now that I know of, not in serious applications yet, at least.
I'm not necessarily making a plea for blockchain, but I believe what we have come to realize, maybe even today, but hopefully even before that, is that the world is in need of a lifelong learning passport. We need to deal with the potential that digital technologies provide. Blockchain could be something that does that, but it will transform into a skills currency or whatever you would like to call it. And it will comprise formal learning, non-formal learning, informal learning. People have to get educated. We have to raise awareness for the fact that blockchain can deliver proof, but it is up to you, the recipient, to determine the value of it. Like it's very valid that we had that discussion about LinkedIn, who is actually validating. It could be your friends, you buy into something. But I think most of us know that that happens. So is that a problem? Because we all know that fraud is around us. It's simply, once again, like Andrea has been stressing all the time this morning, if anything, raising awareness is very essential. And people have to know that we have this currency. It could be something like a national currency that everybody has no doubt about, but listen, you also have these local currencies inside the UK, which have no validity outside of the township, right? So who establishes the value? But nevertheless, people work with it. I think blockchain could do that as well. Once again, raising awareness, making people realize this is something that's going to stay with us. Well, anyway, I'm going to throw it now. Anyone?
My name is Ger Driessen. I want to come back to previous question, and from Wilfred in the back. There was no answer yet, but the title of the session is Blockchain Enhancing Learner Experience. So I'm curious about this learner experience. Does anybody have other ideas, projects about learner experience? Not only about credentials, but also the learning process, as Wilfred asked. And it's a question I have longer, but I didn't find the answer yet, so.
There's a lot of talking, hello, Aldrik Visser, SLO, the Netherlands. There's a lot of talking about individualizing learning routes through the curriculum. It's a hype in primary education and secondary education. I happen to know one example of a school that already uses the badging system to guide children on their own individual learning routes through the curriculum. I could see that work with the blockchain as well.
But we do it already now, the company I work for, without blockchain. So.
Yeah. So blockchain is not necessary, but it could be an application of it. So that's the only thing I can add to this one. The other thing, the man from the ministry was saying, there's always talking about networking and so on, and trust, but there is a governance problem in networking. So I think that the government will have a role to play there to ensure that there's more than only trust, but also validating stuff.
You're quite right about that. I could agree more. The task of the ministry, of the government, I should say, is also the protection of the weak. You can't just leave everything to private sector. It just can't. So, but what should that be? What should that role be? Will it be a supervisor? Will it be execution of law? We don't know yet. So not only do we at Duo we try to learn by doing. We are putting some projects at stake, but also the other agencies we are discussing with. We want to know what governance issues arise when we as a government take part in communities who actually put blockchain projects at stake. So these are very, very interesting questions to be answered. Welcome. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm not sure about your statement that you need government. If we look at finance, we needed banks because we needed to withdraw money from them and deposit and make transactions. Now with Bitcoin and other and cryptocurrencies, sorry, we see that the work and the protocols are shifting to the individuals, to the users. It's a user-driven platform. Couldn't education also be a user-driven platform with all the nice diagrams that we saw? In that sense, that there is no need for a centralized certificator. So where does that leave your Ministry of Education in 10 years?
That is my question.
I think that's quite a simplistic way of looking at it, and it ties into this question about, as you asked, what happens when if a company says, well, yes, we'll offer you the job, but you have to give us all your data to do it, when there's coercion like that. And it's nice to say, oh, you could just not take that job, but you might not have that choice. There are power structures already existing in society, and people who do not have power can't stand up to things like that. And when you say government is a protector of the weak, this is the point. So government needs to step in and prevent this type of situation happening, because people, user-driven situations, it's a nice sort of utopian ideal to say all power should be in the hands of the people who vote, but that's not how society works. We have existing power structures, and we need to work with them, and we need to protect people from being taken advantage of in those. So,
if you allow me a very quick reaction, that you're talking about the job for the Justice Department, not for the Education Department.
No. For education too. So people who are fraudulent in their own claims of expertise for teaching, people who do not adhere to standards in assessment, they could have perfectly valid blockchain identities, they could put their things on, they could attract students and charge them money, but not actually be delivering what they say they are. And the students who are the ones who don't know the topics they're learning, that's why they're students, can't necessarily tell. So there's a role for government, for Ministry of Education, in protecting the disadvantaged who don't know these things. So it's never as simple as that. There's always going to be a need for government to protect the weak.
To even add a little bit on this, for instance, a master's degree or bachelor degree is also a protected title, so you can't just leave this to the general public. There needs to be an institution who tells, yes, he has a master's degree, he does not. And I don't think that will change. And I don't think it should change, actually.
I don't think there's one way to approach this important issue, because blockchains can be used to transact so many different types of assets, each of which comes with their own specific concerns. So in the case of the Bitcoin blockchain, it was optimized initially for the direct peer-to-peer transaction of currency. But it's also, within its architecture, a deflationary currency. So there are only 21 million Bitcoins that will ever be mined. There's no way to have a credit system using exclusively the Bitcoin blockchain. And credit is also a social technology that has been mediated by banks. And so it's very strongly optimized for particular types of use cases, but in no way does it encompass all the ways that it could possibly be applied. What we've encountered at Learning Machine with regards to blockchain-based certification in education is that the integrity of the record as a technological artifact is a different engineering problem from the social engineering problem of the integrity of the issuing institution qua quality. So there will continue to be a role for human verification and assessment of quality of accreditation, in which human governance bodies are crucial, but the technological infrastructure is optimizing for something slightly different.
Now you're really talking very specifically about the Bitcoin blockchain. There are many platforms.
Just another comment with regards your, not question, but comment about the role of the ministries and government. I can bring an example of what has been happening in the field that goes hand in hand with blockchain, which is open education that I was talking this morning. In the Going Open report, we're talking about this issue in particular. And what we notice is that the most successful countries that have an interactive participation of government and ministries in open education policies are the ones in which the ministries work as partners with all the other stakeholders, right? So not necessarily regulating the field, but promoting a space for dialogue, right? And inviting everyone so the field can be self-regulated and providing infrastructure, be it in terms of finances, right, funding, or be it in terms of just a platform for discussion, or even policies that can arise from the dialogue. And so there are examples, for example, if I can cite an example, which is the Opening Up Slovenia initiative, right? If you look at their website, you see that they're talking about opening up not only educational resources and credentials, but really the country in different aspects, like even e-government, and in a number of aspects, the collaboration between industries and universities. And the ministry there has a clear role because they have this power. Every ministry has the power of disseminating ideas and bringing people together. And perhaps that's a way to capitalize on that. Instead of really regulating, really promoting dialogue could be a way forward.
I want to address a little bit about the fear I think we all probably have embedded in this question. I made my reservation to come here on Expedia, and I'm sure some of you have used Expedia before, and it prompted me at one point for my last 4 digits of my Social Security number. My Social Security number is an identifier issued by the Social Security Administration in Washington, D.C. And I was thinking, and the airline asked me for my 4 digits, and my credit card asked me for my last 4 digits. And by the way, most of them have my Social Security number, as well as the institution I attended, which you probably never even heard of. But I think our anxiety is about this compilation somewhere in the sky or in the cloud that is over time. So I want to bring it to a question. Imagine if we asked all the professors, alive and well, in this room, to publish their claims of what they know, like LinkedIn, where we claim, okay, I'm a professor of economics. I mastered in microeconomics, from microeconomics, or whatever the subject is. Imagine if we asked them today to publish their claims and had their department chairs and provosts and deans validate those claims through a blockchain so that all students, any of their peers, we would all have accessibility to it. Would they? Would they do it today? Are we ready for that today? Today, going back to the question the comment you were making about 20 years from now, or someone was making the comment 20 years from now. Let's go to that point. If we're asking our learners to do it today, we're going to do it today, where are their records going to be 20 years from now? They're going to be professors. Just like these folks here, some of them are going to be teachers. So they'll be in the system, already documented along the way, who they've taught, what grades they've given. So 20 years from now, what will we know about that professor? right? That's where we're headed. So going back to the government question, the governance question, whether it's institution, community, country, how are we going to administer this? It isn't one border anymore. It's how do we work together in a trustworthy way? That's what this is testing us on. So we have a lot of social questions to ask, not technological questions. We have issues of how are we going to work together? How are we going to trust the information? Because we can all make these claims today. I can make it on LinkedIn right now. I can sit there and say I have a PhD from an institution you never even heard of. And you would never have a way to check it. This doesn't solve that problem. It helps facilitate the questioning of us to think about where are we going? It's just a way, this is a means to the end. How do we build trust? Is the real question. Right? That's the question we started with. That's the question we're on. This is just a technology platform to help us enable that, to help us bring out the questions. We have a real serious set of questions we have to start asking about how do we do that across the pond, across the borders, institution to institution, right? That's our core question. I think that's where we need to put our energy into that.
Well, I think it's very interesting, and I work at the University of Applied Science, and you see that there are a lot of developments going on. And you triggered me because now I think, okay, but where to start then? Do we still have to then keep on talking about it, discussing it, finding answers? Or in a way, just try it and start somewhere? I have just this practical question in my mind because I also see the benefits for if you change from competence-based to talent-based education, more to informal learning, then I see a lot of potential. But there's also this other side that is still unclear. But I also feel that the question of the chairman of today said, okay, what are we going to do in 1 year? What is going to happen in 1 year? And I do feel like, okay, let's just step into it and let's start doing something. So it's actually an add-on to your question is, okay, but where do we start then from now on? Because I would like to start with something. So maybe someone can.
Well, the trust issue is something that has been dealt with to a certain extent, most successfully in formal education, of course. I have been working for 20 years in the field of recognition, and there is a whole circus of international networks that deals with the process of fair recognition. We want to speed it up. We want to be we want to have people take up jobs, not having to wait 5 months after you graduate, but let's say the moment you graduate, you get your job. But the reason why formal education is so easily recognized has to do with the fact that it has a whole process, a whole methodology in place where you have the rigors of external quality assurance and accreditation. So if in the ENIC-NARIC network, which is the best known worldwide, it brings together 53 countries all over the world that deal with fair recognition. And they say, well, these are the chief ingredients that we require in order for citizens to move freely and get their credentials quickly recognized. The moment you step over from formal education to non-formal, informal education, it becomes much more fuzzy. It also could be much more challenging because, well, we have been touching upon these issues all the time, this 1 hour. How would I know that somebody that tells you, well, Dave, you are a wonderful guy and I recommend you 5 times plus, kudos, kudos, kudos. We all think, oh, well, this is a fraud. So that is something that should concern us more. I mean, we are not going to leave out formal education, but I think the informal and non-formal education really pose the big challenges that we should address. And I know that Ellen is a big fan of the discussion, so I hope I can also throw this one to you now for just your last 2 cents of wisdom, perhaps.
Wisdom is a strong word. I don't use that. I agree. I think they're the biggest challenge. I mean, we talk about these potential risks of fraud or deception in blockchain-based certification systems, but of course these exist in the paper-based systems too, and it's not fair to expect suddenly there's a perfect system in the digital world. But we have processes we can replicate and carry across to provide similar guarantees, and we have validation processes that still have to apply. It's not that these problems magically go away because now we are using blockchains. But yes, so the current issue is we can see that there is an awful lot of value to be had for society in recognizing non-formal and informal education and what people gain from that. But yeah, we haven't yet really worked out the processes for doing that. And that's, whether paper-based or digital, that's kind of what we have to be doing now. I don't have any answers. I just think that's where the focus should be. Yeah. Oh, this is a challenge. Can we?
Okay, so I don't think I have an answer, but I have an interesting project going on that might give some insight. And the project is not about, the starting point is different. So it's not summative, it's not about proving what you've done. It's about knowing where you are for your own learning. And of course, the side effect about knowing where you are is that you can tell other people where you are. And we start out by gathering learning experiences around certain topics, so within guilds. And we ask people, what are the experiences that you find interesting for your development in, for instance, presentation or programming or something else? And within a guild, there's experts and there's beginners. And all of them share the experiences that they find relevant, but it have to be experiences that you could say, okay, I have this experience, I want to have this experience, or I don't want to have this experience. So it's a really small one. For instance, you on presentation saying, I gave a presentation to more than 50 people. And we could validate that. We don't know what the worth is, though. We cannot say, then you're a good presenter, because good doesn't say anything, right? But we're gathering a lot of data within these guilds between beginners and experts. And they are sharing this data or these experiences not because they want to prove to someone what they did, but because they want to know where they are within this knowledge or skills field. And what we find in the data is that we can see learning steps, so that we can see, okay, so people who are good presenters, they did this and this and this. And there we find some worth in the experiences. And also we share with this, we use this in education, but also in companies. And we share also, so who is the other people that want to have this experience, and who are the people that have this experience already? So who can you learn with and who can you learn from? And therefore it's super stupid to say, like, I have given a presentation to 1,000 people, because someone will come up to you and ask you, like, how did you do that? Or can you also teach it to me, or tell me what steps to take to come to that experience? So there is, it would be stupid to lie, right? But that's because the formative incentive, and it's not using it for proof, but it's using it to find out where you are in order to find your next step in learning. So this might also be a way to really focus it on the learning process and use it for the learning process, other than using it only for verification. And we're just starting out, and the tool is super simple. It's really what it is. Like, you can join a guild, you can share your experiences, and the experiences that the system asks also other people to share their experience or their ambition on the experience. But we're really finding out a lot of interesting things. And of course, we also then come in with the HR department, and they ask us, okay, can you give us reports on what people have done? And then they screw over the whole system, right? Because as soon as the HR department or the manager says, can you give me a report on the experiences people share, it's I'm sorry, fucked up.
Yeah.
So,
by the way,
but it is an interesting way of thinking about blockchain in learning, because it's another approach. And it helps us really to understand how people gain their expertise. And that's for informal and formal experiences. So that's interesting.
So the time is nearly up, and I think you made some very fair points. But I think, yes, there are some things that are subjective, but there is also, of course, things you can determine objectively. And I think that's also why we really do need like these government agencies still there putting a stamp on it, because then you can know there's this institution giving these credentials, and he told me I got this master's degree. Because otherwise, if you really do it without these institutions, it will all be more or less subjectively. And then I think room for one more person to speak, and then we have to quit. So anyone else who wants to finish? In that case, I want to end this session.
Thank you.